Meryl, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
It's so great to have you. Now, you have been a lifelong advocate for conservation and the overall health and well-being of all people. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, Meryl. What experiences or relationships in your life have led you to this appreciation you have for nature?
Well, I have to say I'm probably not a lifelong advocate for the environment, not certainly in the way that I didn't start when I was 13 like Greta Thunberg. I really wasn't aware of too much. I think my awareness began because I'm quite a bit older than you. It began in college when we were all hippies and sort of people were getting back to nature. And it had to do with all of those changes and awareness of the earth as an ecosystem. It's the first time I ever heard that word, that we're all mutually dependent, all the systems on each other. But it was really when I had children that the state of the environment and how it impacted these little people. I was fairly cavalier with my own life as a young woman. But when I had kids, I really got serious about the future. And it led me to work very hard during the time that they were quite young on pesticide regulations. That was in the 90s. And through that work, we did achieve something. I mean, I'm so happy that you can walk into pretty much any grocery store now and find organic and sustainably grown foods. But it wasn't that way when I had a baby. So I guess my activism began there, and my awareness just got more and more invested. And now as a grandmother, I'm all in, baby, because we are, as you say, at a pivotal moment.
Well, that is wonderful to hear. And I also share that appreciation and the urgency of when you have children. I have a 14-year-old daughter myself, and she's always asking me that question, like, what are you doing? Are you doing enough? And I said, hey, I'm the CEO of the Nature Conservancy. Give me a break. She's like, we need more. We need it now. We need to go faster, farther, because what planet are you leaving us with? So the fact that you came to your passion and your all-in spirit through your children makes perfect sense to me. And it's amazing what you can do with your voice and your activism and notoriety. So TNC is a science-driven organization. And, we really look at research and data that we're learning about. The IPCC report came out yesterday or 2 days ago now, and we really see that science as our North Star. But even when, the data is clearly telling us what we should be doing, it takes more than just a bunch of scientists with a really important report to elicit action from a lot of people. So we need that radical collaboration between groups, between governments, civil society, corporations, activists to really affect change. Meryl, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, given your experience, what role do you feel the media and the arts in general can really play in encouraging positive action? And really importantly, in this day and age, discouraging misinformation?
What a question, Jennifer. It's an all-encompassing one.
Yeah.
Sort of the vis-a-vis the IPCC report, which had a little minimally optimistic news in it for those of us who are desperately looking for it in this situation. I think that I have a weird take on this, and that is, I think we know everything already. I think we know it now, sort of on a glandular, molecular level. Even people that are not paying attention, even people that are putting it actively out of their minds, know everything about what's coming. And where media comes in and where people who have the access to the media and have an ability to communicate, where their responsibility lies is in figuring out how to engage people in a way that makes them understand that every single person has a superpower in this fight. Everyone does. And I think almost that the inundation of information from all sides makes the enormity of the problem overwhelming. And the whole problem is we're all overwhelmed. And the way I come to this issue is I lie in bed and think, what can I do? Yeah, but what can I do? What can I do? And I think if I answer that question for myself, everybody can answer it for themselves in a simple way. I don't think we all should be responsible for every aspect of this issue. Like, I'm not going to come up with a way of getting rid of the carbon that exists. That's going to have to be with someone with a science background. I'm not going to be able to transform a big agribusiness in ways that need to be done. But I can speak to people. This is sort of about things that I think are solutions and are ways to put their efforts into a niche place where they know they're effective and they're able to affect change, and that they can put their head on the pillow at night and know that their grandchildren are going to have a world. And I think that's, if we make it simpler, and each individual has a different job. So, I mean, right now I'm thinking what we really need is an algorithm that people could plug in where they're situated in their lives. Like, each individual is differently placed. You're placed in a way where your daughter can yell at you and say, well, you're the CEO of the Nature Conservancy, and your job is in one way. But the people who are really responsible for most of the carbon dump on our planet are the board members of the 100 companies that are responsible for most of it. And if we can reach those people, we save ourselves a lot of agita. And that's my mission right now, is to reach them, but not only reach, because I'm talking too much, but I'm just saying, a corporation, you'll know more about this than I will. How can we get to, corporation is just its board. And the board is made up of fathers and grandfathers, mostly, very few women in the bigger polluters. And if we can reach the families of those men, even if they're just focused on the bottom line, if we can reach their wives and their mothers and their daughters, their 14-year-old daughters and sons, maybe we can affect change on a personal level, because I think emotion is the only thing that really changes people's minds.
I couldn't agree more. And, Meryl, you and the work that you've done your whole career, you've brought these incredible stories to life, and you're touching hearts and minds in ways that no one else has. And the ability of storytelling, through the media, through the arts, through acting, is what I think speaks to all of us more than any data will ever do. And it speaks to people, as you said, that are fathers, that are mothers, and gives us a drive for change that I think no other incoming source of information can do, because that's, at our heart, humans, we grew up and evolved around the fire, telling each other stories. And now that fire has become media, and that fire is movies and series and things that you are at the pinnacle of. And of course, you're doing that through your latest film, Don't Look Up, and that sort of using humor and drama viscerally make that message resonate with people. I'm curious, how do you see media continuing that story and being able to bring those kind of messages so that, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and adults can speak truth through storytelling to people in power, whether they're on corporate boards or whether they're politicians who are deciding on whether to drill or not drill, especially in the backdrop of what's happening now with the war in Europe.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a disposable medium. Mm. So we have Don't Look Up. It comes out. It's the most viewed thing that Netflix has put out around the world ever. And then it became the second most viewed, almost the next week. But millions and millions and millions of people saw it. And it went in millions of years and out millions of the other side. It's just a question of what lands, what really changes people's actions and what changes their minds. I think reiteration again of messages that we all kind of already know. There's a point where it's no longer effective. I read a wonderful book recently by John Doerr called Speed and Scale, which is a fantastic prescriptive outline for how to approach the enormity of this problem around the world, based on objectives and outcomes, achievable outcomes. And his mind was changed. He's an engineer, and he and a big investment guy in Silicon Valley early on, connected to all the major players, Bill Gates and all the people. But his mind was changed by his 14-year-old daughter, who, when they saw Al Gore's film Inconvenient Truth in 2007, and they went out to dinner with a whole bunch of people. And she said, "Dad, I'm scared and I'm angry because your generation did this, so you better fix it." And that upended his life. And he sort of did just switch gears. He turned the wheel on a very, very profitable investment business and turned his engineer's mind and analyst's mind to the objective of how are we going to solve this? And it's a great book, Speed and Scale. And I think it's worth everybody who might be watching this would be interested in reading it. But the most interesting part of it was what changed his mind. And it was his daughter. He says it wasn't necessarily the Inconvenient Truth and Al Gore's film. He thought, he watched it objectively, he agreed with it, but it was her turning to him and saying, "You did this and you must fix it." 14 years old. And that's out of the mouths of babes. That's when we change. You don't win an argument with a man by proving him wrong. My mother always used to say, she should know.
So true.
But we have to approach this with love. Everybody who's really responsible for the big carbon dump in our lives is a man who's sitting on a board, and he's defended in so many ways from changing anything. And so we have to reach out and start where he is and get to him and help him to see he can be the hero of this moment, not the villain. Right. Because the villains are all the real bad guys, and like we're seeing in the world right now, they're going to be out there making mischief with the devil. But I think we And that's all. That's sociopathic behavior. We can't change that. But if every sentient, smart, motivated, wealthy, powerful, connected person who can do something about it does, we can turn the ship.
Mm. So I think that's so interesting, Meryl. And, you know, if I think about John Doerr's history, and, you know, he would have been considered the bad guy before he changed his mind. And so, you know, I'd be curious, and I've read that book too. It's fantastic. And, you know, but I'd be curious because your medium is so much more accessible to so many more people than, you know, a lot of people aren't probably going to spend the time to dive deep and learn those stories, but they will watch a Netflix series or a movie or listen to you, you know, talking. And I'm curious, what role do you feel that, you know, the media industry, the storytelling industry has an increasing responsibility to tell these stories, to get to more 14-year-olds who can convince their fathers and their mothers to change their behavior when necessary, to give them that urgency that in my mind really can come through storytelling that your industry represents?
Yeah, well, my industry is a very lumpish entity right now in its own existential crisis. I think that where you'd go to really move on the activism line, where you'd go to move kids is to TikTok and to, you know, 20-second bites of information.
Yeah, it's true.
They're not necessarily watching a whole movie. God, they're just switching to just fast forwarding to the whatever. Fast forwarding is such an ancient way of thinking. But no, I think we're obsolete in that way. And our job is different. And I think entertainment is its own release. I think we're all driven mad by the twin problems of the pandemic and the existential crisis we're in with the environmental and devastation and all wrought by the oil and gas industries. Actually, you know, absent those things, there'd be no leverage for what's happening in Ukraine. We wouldn't have to make friends with people and buy oil from people who dismember journalists in embassies. You know, we would be in much better shape if we turn this ship and really make what's a sort of a Marshall Plan, or not a Marshall Plan, what they did in World War II.
Yeah, Marshall Plan and a moonshot, right? Or Mars shot. Absolutely. Yeah, and Meryl, we're hoping that this will, in fact, you know, there's going to be short-term increase in emissions as people do more domestic production to make up for the loss of energy. But long-term, I think it, you know, again, I'm an optimist. I'm an impatient optimist, but I'm an optimist that certainly likes to say that long-term here, at least, we're seeing that energy independence is becoming that much more important. So an acceleration of renewable energy is something that the Nature Conservancy works really hard on. So I could talk to you all day, but I know that we are running out of time. So I'd ask you one last question. And it's just been so enjoyable, and we really appreciate you doing this. So I guess the thing that I'm sure everyone who adores you, adores your work, would love to know, you know, what words of wisdom do you have for them? And, you know, what would you ask them or share with them to look for their own ways to make a difference? And that's really what this whole event is about for Earth Day, is how can individual action, as you said, make such a difference? So what would you share with our audience?
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess with your audience, that's an enlightened group of people. And I would say to them, honestly, don't despair, because if you have a brain in your head, it's very easy to lose hope and perspective and momentum. And as Barack Obama said, we're the first generation to feel the effects of climate change and the last generation to be able to do something about it. So those are twin things. It's the good news and the bad news, both. And I really feel it's very easy to lose hope. And I would just say, do everything you can to make yourself happy, because this is a big fight. And Nature Conservancy conservators are people who want to preserve our beautiful blue planet. And I have no doubt that we can, with that motivated audience, do it. Each one, reach one. So just to reach out to people and with prayer. Thank you.
Meryl, thank you so much. That was amazing. And we are just so inspired by you at the Nature
Conservancy. I have one question for you, if I could.
Yes, please.
So I know you come from a banking background, and so many of our problems seem to me to be tied in with where people move money around the world. If you had your way, what revisions to the international banking system would you envision could be achieved internationally?
So that's a great question. First of all, I have a conservation background. I did do microfinance. So I worked for Women's World Banking. Yes. So I do work a bit in the finance industry, but certainly was never a banker. But that being said, so there are many things. And one of the key things that we're doing at the Nature Conservancy, Meryl, is we're trying to get banks, commercial financial institutions, to price in the cost of nature of their investments. And it's this big movement that really got scale in Glasgow at the climate conference in late last year. That is, we're seeing hundreds of banks sign up to these principles of incorporating the cost and the opportunity of nature and conserving nature and reducing the threat of climate change into their own balance sheets, and to really start thinking about this at the CEO level. And that's a big shift. That
is a big shift.
It's huge. Yes. Yes. Well, it's many organizations involved in this effort, but certainly TNC is right there. But I know we need to close. And I just want to say in closing, Meryl, thank you so much. We here at the Nature Conservancy are so inspired by you and your career on so many levels. Thank you to the audience for joining us. We all hope that you enjoyed the conversations today, and we hope you join us in our mission to save the lands and waters on which all life depends. Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Happy Earth Day.